Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Greater Miami Expressway Agency Board meeting. I would like to call our meeting to order at 9:03 a.m. And I would like to ask Board Member Peterman to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I also wanted to ask for a moment of silence for the victims of Hurricane Helene. Thank you. Now we'll ask our Corporate Board Secretary to conduct a roll call of board members.
Good morning. Board Member Blanco.
Present.
Board Member Peterman. Present. Board Member Rico.
Present.
Treasurer Pages.
Present.
Vice Chair Perez.
Present.
Chair Kansi.
Present.
We have quorum.
Now let's move to our public comment period for the agenda items. We already have a couple of speakers, but if there's any other member of the public that wishes to address the board, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak. So our first speaker is Horacio Ricobono. He wants to, Mr. Ricobono, are you here? Oh, there.
That one, either one, that one.
Here. I think it's probably. I'd like to pass this, please. I brought a USB, but I have like 7 or 8 copies.
Check the mic, Horacio.
That's a large presentation for 3 minutes.
Oh, it's only 3 minutes? Okay.
Yes.
I'll try to rush.
You may go ahead.
Yes, good morning, board members, and thank you very much for providing me the opportunity to speak in front of you today. This pertains to GMX RFQ 25-01. I put a circulated an agenda, a handout, an agenda, and my name is Horacio Ricobono. I'm a professional engineer in Florida and Texas, chief geotechnical engineer and founding president of Geosol. Geosol is an SBE firm founded 24 years ago. I personally have 37 years of experience locally and worldwide, 30 years of experience in Miami-Dade County, and I'm an adjunct professor at FIU. The reason for this is to provide a brief overview of what this is going to be. It's basically to discuss the preliminary scores and propose the board disapprove and rejects the award today. This is because the preliminary grades do not reflect the RFQ requirements. So I'll go quickly. So in terms of the RFQ, it is very clear that it requires that most of the work, and 60% of the work, must be done by the proposer with its own force and equipment without leasing personnel. That is cited in page 43 of 61 of the RFQ. It also has a 10% SBE participation. And very importantly, is all subs need to be qualified in categories 9.1 and 9.2. 9.1 is basically to do all the field work, and 9.2 is lab testing. And no proposal should be accepted from a proposal. This is from page 12 and 17 of the RFQ. Says no proposal will be accepted from a proposer who does not currently hold valid the appropriate requirement to perform the services. This requirement applies also to a proposal where the subconsultant do not hold the necessary licenses. Information and documentation required to be submitted by proposer need to meet the prerequisite criteria, must be current and effective. When the proposal is submitted, a simple statement without, this is underlined, a simple statement without the required supporting documentation will not suffice for compliance and responsiveness. An additional requirement under section 2.27, it says the prerequisite criteria section above, the consultant and or each subconsultant should have properly licensed and trained personnel that meet the requirements for the services to be performed. The requirement on this section shall be demonstrated by the consultant prior to doing the work. So all subs shall be, very important, shall be qualified to perform the work. Section 9.1, 9.2, there is, FDOT has a website where you can check all these firms. And it's the responsibility of the proposer to ensure that its subs are complying with the requirements of the RFQ. This is on page 12. It says, it is the proposer's sole responsibility to submit a complete proposal that demonstrates compliance with the prerequisite criteria in order to be deemed responsive and to be evaluated by the Technical Evaluation Committee. So the reason for this is, the purpose of this meeting is to discuss
Time is up, sir.
Huh?
Your 3 minutes are up.
Well, it's to discuss why the top two ranked firms need to be disqualified as they have sub-consultants who are not pre-qualified. And we ask that the board checks, and I have provided in the back of this presentation, the list of firms and their subs.
Well,
And also the FDOT qualifications that are required. So,
Mr. Rucabono, I appreciate it, and unfortunately, because of time, we have to be fair with everybody. This
yeah,
was only
so
3 minutes.
basically the request is to not make it, to disqualify these firms. And basically there are 3 firms that were not qualified. And the RFP is very clear, 73%.
As legal counsel, I think these are matters appropriately addressed in a protest within the time deadlines to file rather than
Well,
in
I
this
would
forum.
like to, this doesn't go to a protest because it will delay everything, but there is enough ground as a law, 73% of the firms that applied understood the RFQ.
Okay, we appreciate that, but there's a process for a protest, so that would
Yeah.
be the appropriate forum to raise these issues. Thank
I understand. This was basically trying to expedite this as
No,
protests
really
could be very lengthy.
I appreciate it, but I think you need to go through the proper channel. Even though if it causes a delay, I think you need to go through
Yeah,
the
it's just that the
protest.
selection, it was, the shortlisting and selection was unfair because you're basically selecting
we
people
hear
who
you.
have subs that are not qualified.
Thank you. I appreciate your time. The second person for public comments, Mr. Kuman Vidula.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Kumar Vedula. I'm a principal engineer with Tierra South Florida, Inc., TSFGO, aka. I'm here to speak about the same one that Mr. Riccobono was speaking, the RFQ 2501. We shared the same concerns that he was sharing. There were a couple of things. The subs that the winning teams had, I think the top 2 winning teams had, they were not qualified under, so by your own RFQ, they don't qualify. So that is one, and the other one was the 60% requirement. The question I had was, has that been verified, that if 60%, if the proposer is going to satisfy the 60% requirement? Those were the 2 main concerns. I mean, the subs are pretty good. We actually work with some of the sub drillers, but the fact is that they don't, satisfy the RFQ. So on that basis, I don't think they should have been. There should have been some follow-up process. We were there for the evaluation committee, and I don't think there was any discussion about that. So we're thinking it's an oversight, but we do want to make sure that you pay attention and consider that. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Is there anybody else, Ms. Ralston, that would like to speak?
No, Madam Chair.
So next is the approval of the meeting minutes from our July 11th, 2024 meeting.
I'll move it.
Can just have a quick discussion on the minutes. I had brought up when we addressed the purchase of Dell equipment and computer equipment, whether anything was made in China, and that's not reflected on the minutes, and I would like to include that. Thank you. So let's vote on the item. All in favor, say aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Hearing none, motion passes. Now we are on to the consent agenda. I will now ask our general counsel to read the consent items into the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The one administrative item is the 2025 Governing Board meeting dates for board consideration.
I'll move the agenda, the consent agenda.
Second.
So, do we have the dates? Where are the dates for the, okay. Any other discussion on the consent agenda? So let's vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Next, we move to the regular agenda. The first item is,
Chair?
yes,
Sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure.
Maybe before we go to the regular agenda,
yes.
is it possible to go back to the declaration of conflicts? I think there may be one. And then after you're done with declaration of conflicts among the board, if I could ask that item A on the regular agenda, if we now make that item C, staff is going to do some additional due diligence over the next few minutes, and then we can start with item B on the agenda, if that's your pleasure.
Next, we have a declaration of voting conflicts. Board members, at this time, please advise if you have any conflicts based on the items on the consent agenda or regular agenda.
Madam Chair, I have a conflict on regular agenda item 8B, RFQ 2301. I'll be abstaining from the vote.
So this is to reflect that you voted on the consent agenda minus this item, or?
That's correct.
That's on the regular agenda.
That's on the regular agenda,
On the regular
consent.
agenda.
not the consent.
Okay.
Thank you.
So
And
now
then
we
now,
move
Madam
to the
Chair,
regular,
Yes, ma'am. If it's okay, we'll move now to item B at your pleasure, if that's your pleasure.
okay? So moving to item B, GMX procurement contract number RFQ 23-01- Design Engineering Services for the widening of SLB 137th Avenue from Southwest 8th Street to Southwest 26th Street, work program number A3618-009.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This item is approval of a supplemental agreement number 2 to the professional services agreement to include post-design services in the amount listed on the agenda. If it's okay, Madam Chair, I would ask our Director of Engineering and Emergency Management to provide a quick update on the item.
Yes.
Good morning, board members. As stated, this is approval for supplemental agreement number 2 for post-design services. We are at the end of the design phase for this project. This is to add the post-design services to keep the engineer of record on during the construction phase to address any issues that may come up during the construction phase.
Are there any questions for staff on this item or a motion for approval?
I'll move it.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any final discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion passes. The next item on the regular agenda is, we're moving to item C, Director. It's item C, Design Build Services for the reconstruction of State Road 836, I-395 from west of Northwest 17th Avenue to I-95 Midtown Interchange in Miami-Dade County. And I will now recognize Ms. Ralston to introduce the item.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. As stated, this is approval of a supplemental agreement number 11 for design build contract with the JV mentioned in the amount listed on the agenda. I will ask also our Director of Engineering and Emergency Management to also expound on the item.
Good morning. So supplemental agreement number 11, as per the briefings we had earlier last week. This is for $3.8 million. It has three components. The big component, $3.3 million, is for a water leak that was encountered during construction, and we had to do a workaround for an unforeseen condition. We're working with Miami-Dade Water and Sewer for the reimbursement. They have acknowledged that this is their fault. There are mechanisms within the contract to seek that reimbursement, so we're working that. It also has a design component, redesign of a maintenance of traffic phase on 836 approaching I-95 and I-395. This was done at the owner's request to improve traffic flow during that construction phase or that event. And then the final component was to replenish the contract contingency, which is to address day-to-day issues that may come up in the project. This is a very typical item on the contract because the project has extended beyond the original contract date. We need to replenish that contract contingency. The supplemental agreement in total is for $3.8 million.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions to staff on this item?
The $3 million to 3.3 you said was reimbursable by water and sewer?
That's correct.
That has a timing factor. I mean, it's a timing issue, right? It's just not they're responsible, then they can be responsible for 30 years. I mean, what's the timing on that?
We anticipate that we'll get that before the end of the project. We're working that already. I mean, we're coordinating. We've been discussing with water and sewer. There's a contract. There's an agreement between Miami-Dade Water and Sewer and FDOT on that contract. Because it's a joint project, we're looking to piggyback on that agreement. There's also other mechanisms. If we can't do that agreement, there's other mechanisms statutorily. We've been coordinating with in-house legal to get that process going because they've already acknowledged that they are responsible. It's just the mechanism of how they're going to reimburse it, whether it's going to be through a statutory obligation or if they're going to go ahead and do it through project agreement that already has funds allocated to it.
Has council reviewed that agreement?
Yes, it's under review, and we're in negotiation and demand.
Okay, thank you.
Has water and sewer already confirmed the amount? I mean, they've agreed to the 3.3?
I believe that we've provided water and sewer with all the information pertaining to this claim, and we're coordinating the claim with them and making sure that we get the reimbursement. But yeah, we've provided them all the information.
Okay.
Any other question? So then let's vote on the item. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed say nay. Motion passes. So we're skipping for now item number 1 on the regular agenda, and we're going to move to the next item, which is the 5th round of board policy reviews, and I will now recognize Ms. Ralston to introduce the item.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief, and you are correct. This is, I think, round 5 for the board. You started almost a year ago, looking at all of your policies for the agency. So as mentioned, we're bringing back 2 items. Originally, we had a third that we originally had on in our briefings with you individually. Made a decision to pull that one off because a few of you wanted to add some more flavor for that, which we appreciate. So we'll bring that back for the December meeting. But we'll start with our asset management policy, followed by our IT policy. So in that order, I'd ask our Director of Engineering and Emergency Management, followed by our Director of Toll Operations and Transportation Technology.
So the asset management policy is, it was deferred in the last meeting. We brought it back. We've addressed all the concerns related to how we will be dealing with technology components. We've modified the title of the policy to strictly be asset and how we deal with our assets moving forward. So the policy has been reviewed, commented, everything's been addressed, and it's ready for your approval.
Good morning, board members. The IT policy is the outward-facing policy. It's a fairly generic policy, but it encompasses all of the IT components, and then the individualized ones stay internal.
Any question for staff regarding these policies? I mean, I wanted to commend staff and the board members that participated on reviewing, analyzing, making comments to these policies.
And if I
Yes.
could, Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr.
What I
Olson.
know the team also wanted to also state, I know that the treasurer, I know, was very helpful with us, making sure we included the one item on the AM policy. And I know that Board Member Miller also assisted with that, and several other board members as well. Board Member Blanco, thank you as well on the IT side as well. So just wanted to publicly say to the entire board, thank you for your feedback and guidance.
It's great to have a board with so many different talents that everybody can contribute something. So if there's no final discussion or any other discussion, we'll vote on the item. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Motion passes. So now we'll move to our executive director's report. Mr. Olson, you're recognized.
Sure. Or would you like to do we're ready for A, if you're ready, Madam Chair?
Yes, let's
Okay.
go to A.
All right. So thank you for that, Madam Chair, with the item on the floor. And I'll ask the team to also maybe just give the appropriate highlight based on conversation we heard earlier. This is approval of the TEC recommendation. We've had conversation with each of you on the geotechnical exploration, and I'll pause and let the team give a mini update on the recommendation.
Thank you.
Good morning. Okay, so this, the geotechnical contract, geotechnical services for Kendall Parkway, the RFQ was released in July 1st of this year. We received 11 proposals in August. Last week, the technical evaluation committee met, reviewed, and scored the proposals. And the recommendation for the board is to approve the 3 highest ranked firms of WSP, Arena Engineering, and HR Engineering.
Is there any further discussion on this item? I mean, we've heard public comments about this. Anybody? Let me ask council then. Council, since we had public comments regarding this particular point, when is the deadline for them to contest the results?
Protests are required within 3 days of notice of intent to award.
And that time has passed?
No.
No.
It's after we
It's
approve.
72 hours after the award. So after the board takes action, they'll have 72 hours to file a protest.
Yes, Board Member Pages.
Help me go through this to make sure I understand the timing and the potential protest. 72 hours after awarding, but you're going to go back and negotiate with these individuals, are you not?
No.
No, yes.
So after the award, we would start the negotiation
Okay.
with the 3 highest ranked firms.
Right.
If a protest is filed within that 72-hour period, I believe we would pause the negotiation until we resolve the protest.
So 72 hours is
Correct.
from now.
72 hours from the time of decision. And then if there's a protest, then you put the negotiations on hold until that is resolved, and then negotiate the contract after that.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Any other comments, discussions? I do encourage the people that spoke earlier that if they have cause of concern, that they should follow the procedure and file the protest. We rely on staff, and we're going to move to vote on this matter. So if there's no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any nays?
And Madam Chair, just for the
Yes.
record, if we could have a maker of the motion and someone who second the motion.
I'll move it.
I'll second.
Thank you so much. So the motion passes. So now I'll move to our executive director's report. Mr. Alston, you're
All right.
recognized.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, members of the board. I am happy to give our executive director's update for this board meeting. First, let me try to set the framework for the board and the public. As you know, and Madam Chair, you were spot on recognizing the impact of Hurricane Helene. As you know, we continue to see national impacts to our infrastructure. Extreme weather, transportation infrastructure all around the country. Just last year, 25 disasters alone in 2023, costing upwards of about $73 billion in damages. Of course, those impacted by Helene here in the state of Florida and other states as well. We continue to send our thoughts and prayers to those families, residents, and victims. So hence the role of GMX and its reestablishment, as you know, back in 2023 by state law. So how can GMX make a difference here in South Florida? I think this is a great opportunity. You have seen these data points as a board. It's listed as a challenge, but it's really more of an opportunity for us as the number 6 urban area in the country with the most distracted drivers and number 20 in the country with the highest travel time. So this serves as our mile markers, as we say in the tolling business, that keeps us focused on our mission. And of course, this will continue to guide our work going forward. Last December, as you know, as a board, you set these very clear, specific 4 priorities for the agency: safety, system improvements and preservation, mobility improvements and congestion relief, and transportation technology, with the intent of leading to a strategic plan that I committed to several weeks back with KPIs and departmental goals as well. So as you know, as I shift to daily operations, we kicked off our strategic planning process back on Friday, July 12th. Our second round of the strategic planning process will be on October 11th with all of our managers. As I committed to you, the board will have our inaugural GMX strategic plan. And I think we're 95% there. So by the end of the week, we'll have all of our KPIs and metrics that cover all of our departments, all of our projects and key initiatives. So you'll see that coming forth to the board. We're also proud, and thank you to our TPO governing board members as well. We submitted our information to the Miami-Dade Transportation Planning Organization for their 2050 LRTP. That is the primary function of the TPO. The last time they submitted their plan was back in 2019. So we're now fully compliant with the TPO going forward. So you should be proud of the team, our planning department, all those under our engineering department as well. I'll shift to governance. We are proud of our board member ride-alongs. This is another example of you, the board, rolling your sleeves up, having hands-on look at our roads. This is our board chair, as you see, examining the Miami River Bridge and our fender system. And I know there's been a lot of conversation from the board in prior meetings. And again, commend you for being proactive as you've asked us to reach out to both our federal, state, and local partners. Here is a picture of Board Member Peterman touring our 17th Avenue Plaza, the ring structure and our tolling equipment, and Michael Kelly from Lawson Huck Gonzalez, who also joined us on the ride along. So board members, thank you for your work. I know we have one more to go, and I think I've heard from each of you so far that we may be interested in a round 2 and a round 3. So more to come and the team is working on that. This is more FYI for the board. These are the dates for our 25 legislative session. And I know our vice chair also asked about this as well. The legislative session kicks off on March 4th, 25, and of course it ends on May 2nd, 2025. This is just, again, for information, list of our committee dates, interim committee weeks. We have not been asked to appear as an agency, but in a subsequent slide, I will ask for board authorization just in case there is a request to travel during interim committee week or during the legislative session if we are asked. We've already been potentially asked to appear with the Florida Transportation Commission, which is customary for all transportation agencies in the state. I'll shift to financial stability. We are fully compliant. As you know, in the 23 law, it asked for us to submit our public accountability report. I provided that to the board, listing all of our toll expenditures or where our toll dollars go. And we shared that with the board several days ago. We continue to explore, as you directed back in December, exploring federal and state grant awards. We held our first session back in June, and I know that our GEC has provided a white paper to us that's in draft form, and we're close to finalizing that. So we'll share that with the board as we continue to explore other avenues for the agency. I won't expand on the external auditor's communication. I know our Director of Finance, Budget and Accounting and CFO will address that in the next update. I'll just shift down to our continued engagement, as you know, with all of our partners. Our most recent engagement with the Florida Division of Bond Finance was last week, providing a subsequent event to them and a few other partners, along with our rating agencies, which I've shared with the board. Shifting to people and culture, on September 11th, we actually had our inaugural virtual Teams town hall. So all employees participated. It was a great event. We are 100% Teams compliant now. You as a board, I think you also get our Teams invites, which is a good thing. We provide an agency update, shared updates from the board, and we also get a chance to celebrate all of our employees' birthday announcements and work anniversaries. So I wanted you, the board, to know that. We continue to look for key roles, as you know, our Director of Administration and our Procurement Manager. Those are two roles I highlight that we're still looking for. So for anyone in the public that may be looking to join a great organization, GMX is looking for great talent. So we're looking for a Director of Administration and a Procurement Manager along with a few other roles. I also want to take this time, as I've tried to do at each of our meetings, to recognize our new hires. And you see the list in front of you, and board members, you'll recall, and I think we started at the last meeting, some roles were previously consultant roles, and we shifted some of those core functions back full-time. So some of these are infused here. So Nicholas Crane, Hector Driggs, Danny Gonzalez, Randy Grice, Marisol Marin Schmidt, and Michelle Hicks Levy, all new employees and new hires with the agency. If they're here, I think I saw one or two, just wave your hand just so the board will recognize our new hires. So again, welcome and congratulations to our new
Terry,
employees.
could they stand up and just say their
Absolutely.
name so that we can associate a
100%.
face with a name?
Yes, so our new communications manager, Randy Grice.
Welcome on board.
Our new administrative project manager, Marisol Marin Schmidt.
Welcome.
Our new small business and community engagement officer, Michelle Hicks Levy.
Good morning and welcome on board. Thank you so
question,
much.
Madam
No
Yes.
problem.
I have a
Vice Chair,
question.
Vice Chair has a
You
question.
mentioned that some of these positions that were previously, we hired consultants and now which ones are those? And
Actually,
what's
I
the
think that was
status of?
I think that was actually, my apologies. Sorry, Madam Chair. That was on the prior round that I shared with the board at the July meeting, many of those. So I think we currently have, I'm looking at HR 3, 4 roles that are currently also we're advertising for. Tell me. 6. We're up to 6 roles that we're currently looking for. We're still looking for our transportation policy and government manager. We've had a series of interviews, and we're hopefully close to landing the plane on that one. So that's one of the 6 from memory.
So right now we have, what, 6 positions we're actively looking?
We're currently looking for 6, is that right? 4 was in my head. I think the team is saying 6. But we'll get you that number momentarily.
Thank
as
you.
Our HR manager's verifying the number. So I'll shift to communications and public engagement. We are 100% compliant, and I believe that many of you asked a couple months back on our fleet. And I think you saw this on the ride-alongs. All of our vehicles are branded with the new GMX logo, so we're really excited about that. I continue to have my monthly meetings with the other heads of the toll authorities, both at CFX and THEA. We share great information, good collaboration, along with the Turnpike. Actually, the executive director of the Turnpike also joins us for those meetings. We continue also to have key external stakeholder meetings with key groups, many that you are aware of. I'll just highlight the last one. ACEC, last Thursday, we had a great luncheon with about 40 local engineering firms. So sharing the great news about GMX, the board's vision, and upcoming contracting opportunities. So we continue to do this work, sharing the great news about the agency. This is also another example of us having conversation with the Miami Chamber. And Eric knows, I believe that segment is public, and I'll be sharing that with the board also coming up momentarily. And I'm gonna take this time to highlight 2 other individuals. They don't know this. So our Director of Toll Operations and Transportation Technology also was a guest presenter at FIU. So you'll be seeing some social media posts highlighting the great work of Claudio and what he has done in his profession. And our new Director of Communications, Randy Grice, was just elected the new chairman of the Early Learning Coalition of Miami-Dade, that policy council. So they didn't know I was going to do that, Madam Chair, members of the board. So just want to highlight the great work of our team here at GMX. These are additional considerations for the board. I think as I alluded to early on, I've been asked potentially, that's why I put the word potential travel, to meet with FDOT and I believe Turnpike leadership coming up. Also potential addressing the Florida Transportation Commission on our prior year metrics. And I'll just put an asterisk there because that is still a blended year. I believe the state is making a determination if GMX will need to present in person or not. So I think that decision will come similar to previously. As you know, I'm also a member of the Florida Transportation Steering Committee. These are upcoming meetings. I also mentioned the legislative session, which is also forthcoming. And of course, I'll coordinate that work with you, the board. So board considerations. I have had the opportunity to brief all of you individually, and I'll just start with this. As you know, you have not taken any formal action on the previously approved Kendall Parkway project. Now that I've said that, I think you all have given us direction as staff, legal counsel, to continue due diligence. So what I'm asking are these steps for the board to consider. One, allowing us to begin work on a board workshop because there are some key decision points that you need to be thinking through as we think about cost at some point, as we think about tolling, yes or no at some point, as we think about a transit component or all these other types of questions or comments that you as a board may want to have in the future. A community conversation from GMX. So GMX has not had a community conversation on this topic. So this will allow for GMX to do so. We'll secure prior community engagement. So as you know, when this effort was done previously, emails, surveys, resolutions from different municipalities, also information that was sent to the agency. We'll start gathering that, giving that to you, the board, in a way that makes sense for the board workshop as well. Our legal team has looked at and explored 2 other potential resolutions that the agency should consider. One was previously done from our predecessor agency that needs to align with the 23 state law if the board chooses to move forward. So I put a lot of caveats in there. So this will allow us to at least begin drafting that resolution for the board's consideration. And again, we'll bring that back to you in the form of a workshop. So that is the one consideration and ask for the board. And then lastly, transition efforts. I think you know the transition continues. and we are onboarding our bond counsel. I think we're days away from doing so, which is a good thing. We've been in touch with our rating agencies, as I've shared with you, all three, just in the past 7 days. And of course, there are many other looming decision points, as you know, but we're still moving. I like to say we're 95%. As I look at Claudio and Juan, they tease me on my percentages in terms of our transition efforts, because I think there's still a small percentage, as I've talked to each of you individually, that still needs to be done in terms of transition efforts. So what's ahead? As you know, at our December meeting, you will hear from your outside external auditors. You will receive a formal audit report year in from the prior year. We'll bring back from the July meeting, you gave the green light for us to move on selling and leasing property. We have not moved to do so. However, as I've shared with you, there's a lot of interest and substantial interest, both from government, private sector, et cetera. So we'll bring you a list of recommendations for consideration at the December meeting. And then, of course, with the board's green light, then we'll proceed in that way. And then lastly, the South Florida Saves toll relief program. The current toll relief by the state runs out, I believe, the end of February, beginning of March, plus or minus. So if that stays, GMX, as done previously, will need to have its own toll relief program, which you've already budgeted for. So we'll continue. We'll have that on the radar for December if the board so chooses to move forward with that toll relief campaign. Separately, you'll hear updates in a project update on the targeted transponder program, and we'll also touch on outreach efforts that will be starting, resuming once again now that we have our communication manager on board and our team of consultants who also work very hard to support the agency. With that, Madam Chair, members of the board, I'd ask for your consideration to approve the report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Yes, let's first make a motion to approve,
move
and then
it.
we'll discuss it. Second?
Second.
Okay, now we can have discussion.
Mr. Alston, you mentioned the item that was at last month's meeting that we approved the disposition of certain real estate. Just for my own education, the real estate that we own or we have control over, is it held in the name of GMX? Is it held in the name of the state? Or who is owner? Who has ownership of that property? How's it titled? And when we go to dispose of this, are we now going to go? If it is GMX, are we now going to go, wholesale and from top to bottom?
Go back a slide.
Change out all of our properties to retitle it in the name of GMX, or is it held in the name of the state?
Excellent question. And I know our legal counsel and staff, and we're smiling because this is a continued transition item. So we have, hopefully we're days away from having bond counsel on board. And just to directly answer the question, GMX, according to state law, is the legal entity of record. However, there are still assets that are listed in the name of our predecessor agency. So that is true. So we're working with our legal counsel and a broader team that will try to bring all of this in for a landing over the next month or two, combined with some of the other efforts that we've talked about. So that's why we weren't ready to have that on the item or on the agenda today. But I think we should be ready for December. So I just I spoke for you. Hopefully, if you push back if you disagree, counsel.
No, that's exactly right. As a matter of law in Florida statute, everything was transferred from MDX to GMX. So it's really just a matter of, and everybody in the state has notice of that under the statute. But to give additional notice, for instance, in the official records of Miami-Dade County, we are working through what we need to do to record something potentially to put everybody on notice of that. There are contracts that we could do an addendum and replace the name. But as a matter of law, even a contract right now that still has the MDX name on it, GMX is the owner beneficiary standing in the shoes of MDX. As a matter of law, it's just a matter of notifying everybody in the right way and not doing anything in a way that would in any way upset the bond covenants. That's something that we're being very sensitive to, making sure it's done the right way. And we've got bond counsel with the Greenberg firm coming on board to approve the way everything's going to be done in that regard, so it's done the right way.
Thank you.
So we have a motion and a second to approve the executive director's report. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any nays? Motion passes. So in addition to everything that our executive director has reported, he has also been working behind the scenes. As you all know, we've had a recent ruling by Judge Walsh. So I would like to propose a motion in the interest of continuous advancement of mobility options in our region, alleviating congestion on our roads, toll relief, and ending a long-standing legal battle with Miami-Dade County, and in the best interest of those who utilize the roads and expressways in Miami-Dade County, and now a portion of Monroe County, I move that we, 1, accept the September 25th, 2024 ruling by Judge Lisa Walsh, as there is agreement that GMX is the proper authority according to state law that manages and controls State Road 836, State Road 112, State Road 874, State Road 878, and State Road 974, along with our Monroe County jurisdiction. GMX also acknowledges that all tolls collected on the GMX system are reinvested in our system and funds are not spent anywhere else. GMX further acknowledges Miami-Dade County home rule power, although it was not applicable in this case. 2, direct the executive director through outside counsel to cease any further litigation against Miami-Dade County involving GMX MDX ownership with Miami-Dade County if the county does not appeal Judge Walsh's ruling, and encouraging the entity acting as MDX to cease all litigation to immediately benefit our community. Counsel for GMX continues to be authorized to defend any appeals or suits by any other parties other than Miami-Dade County. 3, direct executive director to begin a renewed engagement with Miami-Dade County on several pending projects and initiatives that benefit our residents, taxpayers, toll payers, and both GMX and Miami-Dade County, if the county does not appeal Judge Walsh's ruling. 4, direct executive director to work with board members to assist the county in appointing 2 board members who meet the criteria by statute. So this is my motion.
Second.
Would any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed say nay. Motion passes. So now we move to our agency financial report, which is exciting for us as a board. I want to commend Treasurer Pages for suggesting this quarterly update to the board. First, I will ask our Director of Budget, Finance, and Accounting to update the board and ask Treasurer Pages if you would like to add anything else. Marie, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There is 2 financial items in the board package. The first one is preliminary and unaudited annual financial report for fiscal year 2024. And there's additional communication from the external auditors on fiscal 24's audit. This communication allows the governing board to contact the external auditors should they have any concerns or specific areas of audit that they want to focus on. So the contact information is there, and that is the governance communication. I won't go through the entire report, but just from a highlight perspective, this is preliminary. GMX did take over the previous agency in August of 2023. Operating revenues is $264 million, a 6% increase year over year. Operating expenses is 103, and it's 8% increase year over year, which is not unexpected. The bulk of that increase is due to the CCSS, our toll transaction, which was part of our budget. It was also included in fiscal year '24, the first full year of several contracts that were reprocured. We also had a backlog of maintenance that we also were pursued and completed in FY '24. We had an overlap of salaries from the previous executive team of the other agency and additional costs for litigation costs. So that encompasses why there was an increase year over year on the operating expenses. Net revenue is $160 million. In the private sector, it's really net income, but in government, it's net revenues, an increase of 5%. Our toll revenue is $249 million, and that is almost a 7% increase year over year. And that's primarily due to fiscal year '23 and '24. A lot of operational improvements were made, and then overall toll transactions was up 2.5%. It's important to note that our bond rating, all three bond ratings from Moody's, Fitch, and S&P, BBB, A3, A, they're all stable outlook. Our coverage ratio for fiscal year FY '24 is 1.97. Again, it's a significant increase over the previous year of 1.88. I also would like to note that when you look at the financial matrix of the organization and you look at the scorecards of all three of the rating agencies, this agency actually scores higher on a credit scale, but for the fact that the organization has been an ongoing litigation, the credit rating is actually lower. But the matrix actually does target this agency as a solid A, not any in other scorecards like a AA credit. So this is a good quality credit.
Thank you very much. Treasurer Pages?
I commend Maria and her staff in putting these reports together. As a treasurer and as a financial guy, it's important that the board has a really good understanding of the numbers. That's our primary job, is managing the money of the taxpayers, of the residents of Dade County. So while this is the report for the end of the year, fiscal year, moving forward at every meeting there will be quarterly reports where we can kind of look at it more from a quarterly basis versus previous year, and we can see trends. Which is, at the end of the day, just seeing a number doesn't mean anything unless you see it versus previous quarters, previous years, and the direction. On the numbers, we should be very, very happy and very proud of these numbers. These are excellent numbers by all measures, considering the situation we were in, considering hopefully the end of the litigation. We've put in place a number of important initiatives in the last couple of meetings. New technology. I know we're looking at the toll plating and that kind of stuff. So we're good. We're good at this stage, and I think we're moving definitely in the right direction. So I appreciate the transparency. Oh, there's one more thing. I also want to make sure we publicly let it be known or highlight it. All this information is on our website. We are really big, as we should be, on transparency. So anybody from anywhere in the world can go into our website and see exactly our numbers, and it's done in a very clear, transparent, and easy format. So I want to make sure that that's publicly said and understood. We don't have to wait until this report to come up to see the numbers. They're there. But as a board, we'll have a dashboard on a regular basis. So thank you very much.
Is there an update on collections?
It has not changed since previous conversations.
Thank you.
Right.
Through the chair.
Yes, you're recognized.
I wonder, with the credit agency, the rating that we currently have, does that affect our bond financing?
It doesn't affect the current, well, on the secondary market, it does. Going forward, new debt issuance, that's going to, obviously affect that. Hopefully, should the litigation be completed, that'd be a conversation we would have with the rating agencies. And I think that's, something that we would also reach out to, sort of having like investor roadshow to talk to potential investors about this credit. So I think a lot of communication is going to have to happen to the financial market.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, you're recognized.
Maria, both the operating revenues and toll revenue both went up over 6%, but our toll transactions only went up 2.5%. Why is that the case? Why is it because, tell me how that correlates.
So
Because our tolls, the toll rates have not changed, right?
our toll rates have not changed. The mix of a little bit of a mix of a collection between SunPass and toll by plate, our video toll, which is called toll by plate. There's a lag on the collections of that, and that revenue is reflected in these numbers. And I think also what you're seeing in the toll revenue is not necessarily, the 7% increase. You could attribute 2.5% to that to additional transactions, just sheer volume. But in FY23, we did put in place, as well as early 2024, additional operational improvements. Decisions were made on policies on how toll by plate was reviewed. I believe also there was additional maintenance out in the lane to tweak the capture rate. So there was a lot of operational improvements that now you see towards the end of the fiscal 24 that's reflected in these revenue numbers.
So are there any other comments to? Yes.
I just had a question on collections. Is there anything, I know nothing's changed, but is there anything in the very near future to like uptick on those numbers on collection?
Yeah, so there's two things to contribute to what Maria was saying. The thresholds of when folks were getting sent to collections has gone down, and we're in line with the state. And so right now, I think now the threshold's $30. Started at $2,500, $1,500, $1,000, et cetera, et cetera. So progressively through this last fiscal year, the threshold's been going down. So that probably has also contributed to that percentage difference. Regarding the reinstitution of the registration holds, we're still coordinating with the state. Ultimately, it's a discussion that's statewide. We believe that hopefully it'll be done by the end of the year, but still nothing official. And that would contribute drastically.
I had a follow-up. When you say you're speaking to the state, is that like through the clerk of
Turnpike.
courts, or is that
No, through the turnpike. The turnpike.
through the turnpike? Okay.
Right. We share the back office and with Thea. So, but that's a decision that has to be done collectively.
And
Yes.
just for the record, so we can, 32% of our transactions are toll plate transactions, correct?
That's after processing, correct?
After processing. And what percentage of that is collected?
45%.
Okay. So approximately 16, 17%, 18% of toll usage is not collected at this time.
That's a huge number, and that's an area that we definitely need to work on
100%.
and improve that.
Sorry, and that's 16, 17% for us or across the state?
That's just for us.
Okay, and how
The
do we
state has their
compare to-
own set.
How do we compare to like Orlando and?
It's a statewide issue. Yeah, primarily the registration hold is a statewide issue. That's historically been our biggest hammer, basically. So when you go register your car and you got to renew your tag, you would have to pay your outstanding debts. That hasn't been the case for the past couple of years.
I believe that when we had a ride-along, you were telling me that some people are opting not to use SunPass because the funds come automatically out of their account or come out sooner than the toll by plate, that they can just wait to pay, or as we see, not pay.
Yeah,
right?
it doesn't mean that you don't get to pay. It just means that it's a different. So that's one of the reasons why we're pushing so vehemently about the transponder penetration rate, because as a transponder, one, not only the ease of use, but we get to draw the account gets drawn instantly once they pass through a toll. If you go through a toll by plate, again, there's that percentage of folks that won't pay. Doesn't mean that they don't owe the money. It just keeps stacking up and stacking up. But ultimately, when the registration hold gets reinstated, there will be a debt to be paid. But yes, you're correct. We have seen a trend statewide, not only us, that the penetration rate throughout the state and all agencies has gone down.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to our next board meeting and maybe to the campaigns where we can find a way of promoting the higher use of SunPass, because people can get that 50% discount when they use SunPass, and they do not get it when they're using the toll-by-plate. So it seems to me that the people that need the biggest break are the ones not using it.
Yeah, actually, well, I was going to do this after, but since we're on the topic, so I'm very excited that we have a new communications manager, Randy, which stood up previously, and we've already been doing some coordination internally, and we've been discussing a campaign, and so we're getting ready to launch a social media campaign to raise the awareness of all the benefits that the SunPass brings, because not only the ease of use and the how easy it is to be billed and to pay, but you also reap the benefits of the rewards programs. Currently, if you don't have a SunPass, a SunPass in good standing, you will not reap the benefits of the 50% discount that others would be enjoying. We are also striking a partnership with the Florida Tag Association, and they are like a unified group that oversees all the DMVs, right? And one of the ideas is to distribute transponders at the DMV. So when you go buy a new car, you register your car, there's the stand, there's the transponders. So that's a good point of distribution for the transponders. Same thing with identifying schools, both private and public, to distribute in driver eds program. So, your teenage kids that go and get their licenses, they get their new car. It's a good way to avenue to introduce them to SunPass and explain the benefits of the program. And then lastly, we're also going to be looking at targeting dealerships, right? So all the big dealerships that sell high volume cars, when you're doing your financing, you get your tag and everything else. With that, we could also say, hey, look, this is a transponder, and then enroll them in at the dealership right there. So we're looking for different avenues to increase that penetration rate and increase the awareness of the benefits of using the transponder.
Thank you very much. Yes, Vice Chair.
Sorry, lastly, if at some point when you all start doing these communications, if there's anything for us as board members on our
Sure.
own social media that we can easily push out, please send over.
We will.
Just to help
We'll
if
definitely
that's
coordinate.
allowable. I imagine it is, but yeah.
Well, thank you very much. So, next on the agenda are the informational items. The procurement report has been provided to the board with updated contracts executed and open procurement. No action is required by the board. Are there any questions on the procurement report by the board? Also, the CFO mentioned to us the correspondence from our external auditors that's in our packet. Again, there's no board action on this item, it's just for information. And so, hearing no issues, we will now move to our project updates. The first project update is on the State Road 112 Toll Zone Rehabilitation Project, and I would like to ask our Director of Toll Operations and Transportation Technology to present this item. Claudia, you're recognized.
So this project update is for the toll pavement rehabilitation zone, and this was on State Road 112. And I'm really excited to present this, even though it's not a very large project. It had a lot of components on it. And I'll be honest, I've run a good amount of projects in my time, and I don't remember one that was kind of so smooth with so many moving parts. So very quickly, what was the purpose and need? As Marie alluded to before, we were having some operational issues, specifically on 112 regarding collections. When the asphalt gets a little bit older, it starts degrading and it affects the loops. And so why is that important? Because the deterioration of the asphalt condition creates issues with the loops, which is lower accuracy, obviously collecting for collections, specifically on the VTOLs, because if the loop doesn't pick up the car, then it doesn't know when to take the picture accurately or timely. So obviously that impacts toll revenue, and then it also requires for us to go out in the field on a frequent basis to do maintenance, and that requires us to close lanes, which also reduces revenue in turn. And then ultimately, it's also a higher maintenance cost because we're going out there frequently. So there was a project put together to redo the pavement zones in all 4 zones of State Road 112. But obviously, logistically, it has its challenges, right? Because you have to completely shut down the highway. And if you're delayed, then the more you're delayed, the more the roadway's closed, the less revenue you're collecting as well, and also affecting the traveling public. So the 4 zones were 120, 140, 160, 180, which is basically east and west on State Road 112. And it required us milling down almost 5 inches. And that might not seem like a lot, but that is quite a bit in terms of asphalt, just because to put it back, you have to give it time to cool down and roll it properly and compact it, etc. So to do it in such a short period of time was a pretty big feat. The contract, like I said, was very quick and short. It was 60 days, and the contract cost was $755,000. And so it was done through the course of 4 weekends. But the biggest component here was the coordination, right? This project was going at the same time as the Big 395 project, which was closing lanes on 836. It's also coordinated with the GGI project that FDOT is running, and FDOT had a side street project. So there was, aside from the regular partners that we normally partner with, Miami-Dade County, MDAD, the aviation department, obviously because State Road 112 is a major artery to the airport, all the city of Miami, all their local projects. But we also had to coordinate with these big projects and make sure we coordinated the closures, because the last thing we want is to have a full closure on State Road 112 and then an adjacent closure on the GGI or another closure on 836. So we wanted to make sure that all the detour routes were coordinated properly. Thankfully, even though the weather wasn't great, it gave us enough time to be able to complete this project quickly. So we did it over the 4 weekends. I know we sent communication to the board members, so you are all aware. And the lane closure started on Friday night and ended on Monday morning at 5 a.m. But thankfully, we were able to open the road consistently before those times. And then recently, we finalized the project with all the final striping, which was on September 8th and 9th with partial closures. So, like I said, the coordination was extensive. And this was probably the biggest legwork and the biggest difficulty of the project. We had to coordinate with the airport and all of our partners. And I thought we did a really good job in terms of our communication, folks. Not only letting our partners know, but the public. We had traffic events, we had traffic advisories, we had signage out on the roadway, and frankly, we didn't actually get many complaints, which typically we would if you're closing down 836. We did it very strategically. We did it on certain hours of the night, and we did it in certain directions. So typical operation was on a Friday night. We'd start shutting down the lanes progressively. We'd mill and resurface, and we'd start doing all of our closures, and then they would mill and resurface the whole thing in one night. One of the challenges we faced early on was the cooling of the asphalt. With the hot temperatures in summertime, it was like putty. So we had to think on the spot, and we started bringing a lot of water trucks, and we started doing some different methods to cool down the asphalt in a quick manner so we can cut into them. So basically on Saturday, you had the whole entire crews doing all the temporary striping and all the loop cleaning and setting up for the cutting of the loops. And on Sunday was the final installation of the loops and basically all the system verification and functional testing. Now, I want to point out that every day that Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, they're completely different crews and different contractors. So as you can assume, that coordination had to be very airtight. So you can see the partners that work together here. Obviously, we ran the project. General Offroad was a contractor. SSB was all the MOT. Transcore, who's our toll integrator, had to also come in. They were the ones doing all the tolling. Elite Cutting, we had an external sub come in because they were doing all basically the clearing of the conduits underneath the roadway before we put the asphalt. And then we had a project administrator and the inspection from HNTB from our GC. But I do want to highlight how critical it is because this project basically went out without a hitch. Not to say there weren't any challenges. There were definitely challenges out in the field, but I was extremely pleased with the way everybody worked together. And this was a great example of how if everybody works with the same common goal in mind, you can accomplish many things. There was no infighting. There was, this was just a very smooth, well-run, executed project. And I want to congratulate everybody that participated in it. From our internal folks, I want to give a shout out to Wadi and to Danny. They were out there at 2, 3 in the morning overseeing some of these things. I was out there during the day. So it was really a group effort from everybody. So I'm very pleased that they came out. And ultimately that reflected. So the project was completed 25% under original time and 11% under budget. And minimized the impacts to the traveling public and to the toll interruption. So that's it in a nutshell.
Board Member Pages?
Couple questions. Have we seen, in a short period of time, have you seen an improvement in collections
We
in
have.
that specific?
It's a little bit early to tell, but I can tell you from the preliminary data that we've seen in the past month, yes, there's an uptick in collections, specifically in the VTOL area.
Okay.
So we will bring back the benefits of it. It's just a little early because we just finished it on September 10th.
Thank you. That was actually my next question. On all these projects, we should always have a follow-up on as far as specific approval and then benefits once it's implemented. I think
Yes,
it's important.
I can tell you off the bat just the amount of money we're spending on MOT
Yeah.
to go out there and continuously.
absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
a tremendous benefit.
Are there other zones and other highways that require the same job?
This one was the worst one.
Okay.
There's none of them are that bad. This one was kind of on a category on its own, but we are looking at other areas. There's one that's going to be coming on 57th Avenue eastbound. So that's kind of the second one in the line, and that's going to be coming this fiscal year actually.
Okay. And how long does that last? What's the lifespan of that?
So asphalt usually lasts about 12 to 15 years.
Okay.
So the next one that we've identified is probably at the 10-year mark.
Okay.
But it's degraded, so we're going to tackle that one this fiscal year as well.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. So the second project update is on the Miami Freedom Park project. And first, I would like to commend staff for quickly pulling this together after a briefing to share these updates with the public. And I would like to ask our Director of Engineering and Toll Operations to present this item. Juan, you're recognized, but this is one of the things that I am very, very curious about. And personally, I know that it may not be solely a GMX issue, but this Freedom Park project is going to affect tremendously the traffic on 836, and the fact that this project was approved without a finalized traffic study is something that it's very concerning to me. So I appreciate you pulling this information.
Thank you. So yes, through the briefings with Chairwoman Cancio, she was concerned about how this project was developing, the coordination. I'm going to speak to it basically from our perspective since we're one of the principal stakeholders in the area. But I wanted to give you an idea. This is the proposed development for the Miami Freedom Park. You can see the proposed stadium, which will be pretty much right outside this window. In the future, it'll basically block all the views once it's done. On the western side of the project, you see what looks like soccer fields. That's actually an elevated parking garage with soccer fields on the top, right? So these are, I believe this is about a 2-story structure because of FAA glide path restrictions. They can't go any higher than that. The soccer stadium as well has glide path restrictions. So that soccer stadium will not be any higher than the hotel, than like the Sheraton height, right? Because they have to adhere to FAA requirements. But you can see, and then everything in the infield is what they refer to as retail and rooms that they're also proposing in the area. So our part of this is to review how that development is going to impact traffic around the area. We started the communications with the Miami Freedom Park group in April, is when we had the initial meetings. It's stakeholder meetings that we held in downtown. And in June is when we had the traffic statement and what we refer to as their study methodology, which was finally submitted. And then they began the process of doing the traffic study, which is still ongoing. Between June of 22 and November of 22, there was a series of submittals going back and forth, comments, reviews. Our team, primarily head up by Myra Diaz, our senior planner, and our planning team through HNTB. There, we look at everything that's submitted. We provide comments, and it's a steady back and forth. And they do this with all the stakeholders, not just GMX. They do it with the city of Miami, the county, and DOT because of all the jurisdictional agencies that surround this development. Right now, we are finalizing some pending review comments that are coming in on their final stages of the traffic study. I think there's some items of just technical things that we want to make sure that they account for and that they consider as they put their final traffic study together. And then earlier last month, September, we had a joint agency coordination meeting that DOT hosted at District 6 and through Teams, where we really got to talk about a lot of the issues that are coming up, a lot of the concerns that have been raised through their traffic and their upcoming milestones. One of the things that I want to kind of point out, right, because I think it's important to note that the traffic study that they're doing is really going to show what the ultimate demand for this development is going to be in the future. Opening year through design, what they call design year. It's because 836 today already has a bunch of serious congestion issues. Statutorily, it's unfair to tell the development of the Miami Freedom Park that they will be responsible for all the improvements associated with their development because we already had pre-existing conditions. So at the end of the day, what we want to get out of this traffic study is we want to understand what those future demands are, so that as we plan our future improvements on State Road 836 and along Lejeune Road with the CD roads, that we can take that into consideration to make sure that we are planning correctly for the future. This isn't a study where we're going to pass the buck, because we already know that 836, Miami's already at levels that exceed the normal congestion flow. So, I wanted kind of like to put that in perspective, because a lot of people a lot of people say, oh, well, they have to fix this and they're going to have to fix that. That's not necessarily the way it works. And I just wanted to kind of preempt that. But we will make sure that everything is addressed so that the impacts that they are taking, that they are accounting for that in their development. The final traffic report is anticipated to be completed by the end of this year. We don't exactly have a time frame, but we're thinking before like mid-December we should have a final report on the traffic. Through our coordination meeting that we had in September, we're going to be starting to develop working groups for design of their improvements, access, ingress, egress, through the different areas along 37th, 14th, and through the 836 CD road that would access in. So those reviews and that coordination is set to begin hopefully in November, December. What happened here? Oh, I didn't do anything. Oh, you know what? This is my curse. I always have technical. Oh, there we go. All right. The Miami Freedom Park group has expressed that they do have a completion date goal of end of calendar year 25, early 26. They've always expressed that they wanted to have the stadium component open for the upcoming World Cup in 2026. Even though the stadium will not be used for World Cup games, they wanted to have it available for practice, as a practice facility for teams that will be playing here in Miami. And then just recently, the Florida Governor, DeSantis, approved an $8 million job growth grant and allocated $8 million to the Miami Freedom Park for road infrastructure improvements. So that would go to all the work that needs to be done to address the traffic coming in and out of the Miami Freedom Park.
So, thank you very much for this presentation. When we had the discussion, you said, no, they're not going to pay anything. Like, if there's any improvements that we as GMX have to do in connection with this access issue that they're creating, we're going to have to pay for it. Yes, of course.
I'm I was concerned, immediately I called the executive director at the time and made it clear, where were we at the table, the predecessor, were at the table when this was being planned out?
Well,
Is it normal, I mean, it's a serious question, is it normal not to have a traffic study prior to an approval of this nature? Is that normal? Have you ever seen it before?
For a development, for a development approval, I believe that the traffic study phase is, remember, this was done by the city of Miami. This area was rezoned.
Yes.
The traffic phase should have been completed prior to what's going on out there today. You usually go through that zoning process. You approve a project in general, like prior to going into, because you're not going to spend monies on a project that's not approved, right? So they weren't going to start a traffic study, or at least not a detailed traffic study, until the city of Miami approved the zoning for this park, which happened, I believe, sometime in 2015, 2016, whenever it was that all this went down. The initial meetings for the stakeholders didn't begin until April of 22. That's when we get in, that's when we come into the mix to, as an agency, express what we are going to be looking at out of these reports. What we want them to address, the traffic coming in, the volumes, so that we can get get the magnitude of what that is, and then be able to look at what improvements above and beyond what's already pre-existing they would be responsible. So let me caveat that, right? Anything above and beyond the existing conditions that are out there today, yes, there will be certain responsibilities that will fall on the Miami Freedom Park Group. But in terms of highway expansions and stuff like that, where we are already in the state that we're in, those type of shift of responsibility. Those are the type of items that we probably won't get, or they won't see. But it's more general area impacts that they will have to address as part of their project.
Well, I'm glad you clarified that, because it would be unacceptable, at least to me, that we have highways around the project on both sides. We've planned out our strategic plans based on a golf course with 500 users a day versus 20,000 people at the same time in the place. That's a whole different ballgame. I don't care what they say, whether the highways are crowded, not crowded, whatever. That change is going to impact our design, our implementation, and in many regards, in many ways, having to expedite or bring forward projects that we probably did need to do for some time. So there is a cost to this agency. There is a cost. One that we were not consulted on apparently at all, or very minimally. So I think I speak for myself, and I think the board is probably going to be quite interested in keeping very close tabs and very close involvement in exactly what it is that we're agreeing and not agreeing to. And I want to keep all of our options open as far as protecting the residents of Dade County on this issue.
Absolutely.
I think we're all in agreement. Board Member Peterman?
Yep. Do you know if the traffic study is taking into account not the day-to-day, the everyday flow of traffic in that area, but on specific nights, like, for instance, if there's a Miami Heat game downtown, or if there's a Miami Marlins game, or if there's something special going on the beach, like a long weekend, that there's a huge flow of people moving towards the east. Do you know, are they taking those scenarios into consideration in their traffic study?
And for the record, it has not been finalized, correct?
That is correct. Yeah. So typically, and I'm going to speak from how we do our traffic studies in generally, typically a traffic study doesn't take into account special events. What we look at is peak times, peak travel, what times you get the most traffic, what times you have the least traffic, and then you plan according to peak. So if within the data that the Miami Freedom Park folks would have, and again, I don't want to speak for what they're doing because we're not running that process, we're just doing the reviews. if those peak levels fall within events, within the times that they're doing traffic counts, because they go out there, they put in the traffic counters, they do origin destination studies, they gather that data during certain times to then kind of interpolate how they put together all those numbers based on your highs and your lows. And that's how your traffic study numbers and your demand for your forecasts for traffic are put together. So to say that they're using specific event traffic, I can't answer to that. I don't think that's because we wouldn't. I know that when we do projects like that, we don't look at specific events.
The data collection is a 24/7 time period over 2 or 3 weeks.
Over a month or 2 month period, because you want to make sure that you take a good sample size of what the traffic is, and typically you try to do it during periods that are normal, where you don't have holidays, where you don't have vacations, where you have regular flow of traffic coming in every day for everyday life, work, school, and so forth.
Okay.
So it is my understanding that the stadium will be used for Inter Miami, but they only have what's like 13 home games a year or something like that. But I guess our biggest concern would be all the office space, hotels, commercial property being developed within the park, right?
Yes.
And even what City of Miami is planning on moving some of their offices into Freedom Park.
Correct.
Will bring a lot of traffic on a daily basis, right?
So subsequent to the Freedom Park folks starting their process, I believe it was late last year, early calendar 24, is when we learned about the City of Miami wanting to move a portion of their departments to this area. That is independent from the Miami Freedom Park. We've reached out to Miami Freedom Park folks. We've talked to them about that. We've asked them if they're looking at those impacts as part of what they're doing, and they've expressed to us that is being handled specifically and solely by the City of Miami.
Wait, isn't that inside the park?
It's inside.
You just showed the picture.
Well,
can you go back to the?
So what happened here was that the City of Miami carved out that on the top right corner of the screen, the City of Miami carved out that piece, and they kept that. So that is City of Miami. That is not part of the Miami Freedom Park development. City of Miami is handling that on their own, independent of what the Freedom Park folks are doing.
Is there not a master plan for the project? I mean, doesn't everywhere where there's a golf course, is not part of the master plan for this project?
For the Miami Freedom Park, it's everything you see there with the exception of that little corner. Because again, the City of Miami carved that out for themselves.
Well, I think the bottom right, the aquatic park, that's separate. That was not
Right,
part of it.
The Grapeland Park area, that all stays. It's that top right corner that the City of Miami decided to carve out. They kept it. They are the ones going to be building that out, independent of the Freedom Park.
But what about commercial space, hotels and other commercial properties?
That is in the area that you see between the stadium and the parking garage, and that little piece on the, I guess, the northwest corner.
I read reports that it would be approximately 1 million square feet.
I'm not sure about the size of the development.
Madam Chair.
So, just one more question. So on the exit of the 836 westbound, when you get off on 37th to access the airport, you're saying that they want to create an access. I see a road right there coming into our road.
So on 14th Street, they want to create an exclusive right turn in, right turn out. Northwest 14th Street right now is under the jurisdiction of the Florida Department of Transportation. So they are reviewing that area. Obviously, that is an area of concern for us as well because 14th Street acts as a collector distributor road for traffic that exits 836 to use Lejeune and go to the airport. So what they do there is going to be very important to us as well because it will impact that flow of traffic that provides access to those two, to those two areas.
So we, as an agency, we are not directly responsible for any of the construction into the access roads to the park?
So along 14th is DOT, along Northwest 37th, I believe it's City of Miami. We will have jurisdiction on the CD road, which is when you're going east and you exit to go to Lejeune and to the airport, that ramp that takes you on that road before you make your decision to go to Lejeune Airport. They are proposing a ramp, an in-only ramp to access the development, and it would wrap around the north end and then go into the roads.
But who's gonna pay for that?
They will. That's all them. They will have to pay for that exit ramp. They will have to, in that coordination, we will have to make sure that their design accounts for safety, the proper standards, and we will look at the traffic that they produce to make sure that they provide enough queue or storage to allow for proper flow of traffic to Lejeune and to the airport.
So that $8 million grant that they received, who received it? The developer
I
or?
believe it was the
city?
Miami Freedom Park folks, yes. And it was, according to what we read in the article, it was for road infrastructure improvements.
All right, two questions. Have you had discussions with TPO on this issue as far as a coordinating, a broader coordinating agency?
Not with the TPO, no. We've had.
So they
meeting-
provide no consulting or anything?
No, not on this.
Okay.
That I know of, the TPO has not had involvement on this particular project. We have, through coordination meetings, discussed the project with other stakeholders, the airport, DOT,
Okay.
and the cities.
Perhaps we should follow up on that. I mean, considering it's a project in the middle of the city next to the airport, I think it kind of makes sense. Obviously, a big part of the traffic study has to be a transit component. I have to assume, because we're not going to get all the cars into this place and out unless you've got a transit component. Now, I don't see any transit in here except one little bridge, which I think goes through this building. I think.
I think it goes to
There's
the
a little.
parking lot.
There's a little up in the upper corner. There's a little
yes.
bridge there that's not there today.
It's the conceptually, it's a walkway.
Okay. And where does that go?
It goes into their park, but it would go elevated over. It looks like over our parking lot.
Okay, thank you. And we haven't been consulted on that.
We had a conversation very, very early on in the process when they were still getting this approved through the city on, what ifs, but nothing really developed out of that. It was just ideas. Kind of they were, fishing around to see what we could potentially do, but that conversation fizzled, and we never really had any other discussion. At least not that I've been a part of.
I suggest and I recommend, and I'll do it myself because I sit on the board, so I'll go through with that. I think we have to have conversations with TPO, who handles all the transit issues. And we need to have a discussion on how it is all this kind of comes together. Because there's clearly a transit component. It goes through our parking lot, but yet we weren't consulted on the traffic study, we were consulted on the transit plan, and we definitely weren't consulted on the fact they're going to use our parking lot to add transit to the project. So I think we've got a lot of questions. We have a lot of concerns. I mean, it's not anyone's fault specifically, but I think we have a lot of concerns. A lot of concerns on how this is going to impact the residents of Miami-Dade County. City of Miami, I'm sure, is very happy. They got the new park, get a nice thing, new buildings and stuff, but the rest of us are concerned. Thank you.
Yes.
If I may.
Board Member Blanco.
Thank you. And this is to piggyback off of Board Member Page's. So do you believe that we have been involved enough or have been brought in enough during this whole planning phase? I see a lot of different pieces to this puzzle that is still ongoing. Do you believe that we need to be involved even more in discussions?
I think it's
soon, because it seems to me as if, based on what I'm hearing, that we're still not being connected to or consulted on many of these items, and crunch time is coming, so to speak, for their project.
I think as a stakeholder that's going to be impacted by this, I think we are being reached out to for the components that we have to be a part of right now. We are participating in the traffic study. We have, they haven't ignored our communications and so forth. You know, we really don't have a say on what they're doing inside. That's them.
Sure.
Our concern is making sure that we address how their traffic is going to impact the existing traffic, how we can mitigate for those impacts through their development, and then understand how much more they're going to be adding to what's already out there so that we can take that into consideration in our future plans. Because right now we don't have any plans that I can point to and say, hey, we're going to do this and you're impacting it X, Y, you know, this much more. Because if that was the case, then I can point to something and say, we're going to do this, but now you're forcing me to go this much.
That's exactly.
Now I can point to something and say, now you should be responsible for this much more. Right. But we don't have plans in that area to point to, which is kind of where we're at, right? That's why it's hard to say, oh, I'm going to shift this responsibility to you, because we don't have that plan.
So
We just went through a capacity improvement modernization of 836 that we opened up like 4 years ago. So we haven't gone into another stage of, okay, what else can we do on 836?
That's exactly one of my concerns, where all of a sudden, hey, we need you guys to get this done before, you know, opening day or whatnot, and we're not going to have the time or the resources or whatnot, and we need proper planning time. And I'm concerned about how much, you know, because of our level of involvement, if we're being given the proper expansion of time.
Their schedule is aggressive. It is a concern for us because we do want to have the proper time to digest, review, and make comments. I believe if our board member Miller was here, she would express those concerns as well. She has already vocalized that in the coordination meetings. I will tell you that we won't do anything to help accelerate anything that has not been addressed properly on our end.
Okay.
We will ensure that that we're heard.
Thank you.
Director Toledo, we appreciate all the information. I don't want you to think that you're in the hot seat here. No. We appreciate all this information. It's just that I don't think that there's ever been a project of this magnitude that has been approved without a finalized traffic study that would have considered all these things. I mean, you're talking about easements, you're talking about access roads and costs that, you know, clearly they need an easement if they're going to build a bridge over a property, right? But like who? So I don't know who's in charge in the city of Miami or in that aspect of the Freedom Project, but it's concerning for everybody in Miami-Dade County, and we're here to improve mobility and transportation, and this is going to be a problem because I think somebody's not really thinking clearly that they want to open in 15 months. They started groundbreaking, and we don't know the implications of this. So I think we need to be more aggressive stakeholders in this.
So if I may, and again, in fairness to these folks, this update was kind of sprung on us on Friday afternoon, and we did reach out to some of the representatives to let them know that we would be providing an update from our perspective. They did say that they would try to have somebody here present today. I'm not sure if there's anybody in the audience that could speak to this, but I think it would be prudent to see if we can work with them and maybe they can come and give a formal presentation in the future and allow them kind of to prepare a little bit, because I would feel bad to put this gentleman on the hot seat right now with not knowing what to expect, but you know, there is a representative present.
I wouldn't suggest that. But from my perspective, this needs to become a priority one issue. I mean, we don't even know the cost. We don't know what we have to do. We don't have a baseline. We don't have anything, and including our building is in peril. So I think we need to put this to priority number one, convene multiple agencies. TPO has to be involved. And bring it together and see what it is. We can't be building highways out to wherever we're building if the center of our system collapses, and it potentially could. It could. You get 25, 30,000 people coming in next to an airport, and we don't have the proper ingress and egress, and transit's not in place. Who knows what the outcome comes? That's a direct impact. That's a direct impact to this agency. As far as revenue collection, cost, planning, everything else, we are directly impacted by this project. It's not a peripheral project.
Just one thought, and I know it's been over 10 years, and it's a different project, but if there's an institutional knowledge, or just to go back on the Marlins Stadium and see what the do's and don'ts, still City of Miami, still a lot of, I know it's not the same, but if there's best practices where maybe we can go back to how we handled a lot of that stuff, that might be helpful. Lessons learned,
Well, that was a comments that were brought up during the initial discussions on how they were, when they were putting together their methodology, because they pointed out to how they would be treating this area as opposed to how the Marlins Park was redeveloped. But the Marlins Park was basically redeveloped into another stadium. You already had a stadium there, so your traffic, the way that you would plan around an existing zoned use facility really didn't change much for the Marlins. It was just taking into account how they were going to be reconstructing. And remember, the Marlins went from the Orange Bowl, which was a 80,000 plus seat stadium, to Marlin Park, which is less, right? And then, they did have all that other area planned, but, a lot of that development hasn't really come to light yet. But we stressed that this was a different animal, that this required more details to look at, because you're rezoning now. You had to really modify how you were going to look at this facility for the stadium use, for your commercial and retail, and make sure that their methodology accounted for all these intricacies that the Marlins Park already had in their development.
Yes.
And if I could just add another comment too, I mean, as I'm thinking about this, their goal is their timeline is 2026 before the World Cup. And I'm also thinking about the number of cargo movement that's going to be going into this stadium, just given the commercial. There's going to be a lot of activity beyond just fans going to this. So I'm concerned as well.
Absolutely.
This is pretty huge.
Yes.
It should be a priority for us.
Madam
Yes.
Chair, and I apologize that I had to get the tail end, but I think I heard most of the dialogue. We'll make this a priority. It is a priority. We've had a series of meetings just over the last year that I know we've all participated in, but we'll follow up at the December meeting with the appropriate update for the board and in advance with your briefing. So I'll
Thank you,
take care of
Director
that.
Toledo. Okay.
And then, Madam Chair,
Yes.
if you don't mind, before you go to announcements, a lot has happened in the past 30 minutes, and I apologize in advance for having to step away. So just to advise the board and council and I, the reason you saw us moving back and forth, we were debating if we could actually do something in shade now, but we can't based on law and our bylaws. So now that we know that, let me bring you up to speed based on action that you just took. So the county commission is currently meeting. There was an initial motion by Commissioner Cabrera, seconded by Senator Garcia, asking the commission to cease litigation moving forward related to GMX and MDX. There was a lot of conversation from members of the commission. It landed on Chairman Gilbert appointing Commissioner Cabrera to negotiate in advance of the next county commission meeting with all parties trying to figure out some settlement agreement. So I'm using the term settlement agreement because now it potentially, as I see you're pulling up, it potentially involves, clearly they're different entities. So what I also failed to mention is the only public comment was from the prior chair of what was then, I'm gonna call MDX 1.0. And there were no other public comments. They landed on
Who was that?
Jose Pepe Diaz. Let me say that formally. I think they landed on doing a settlement agreement. The commission appointed Commissioner Cabrera. We have had a mini quick conversation, nothing more. But now, since we cannot go in shade, I think it's probably prudent for us, since this board won't meet again until December, to have some conversation now and maybe set some parameters. And I'm going to ask our council to weigh, to take the lead on this, and then we can, think through what the right next steps are. I think sounds like there are multiple parties. So GMX is one party. The county is a party. And I have to assume the third party would be the entity purporting to be MDX, right? So I just have to assume there are three different parties. Sounds like the commission is ready to meet and quickly negotiate. Council needs to talk through what the current dates are, because there are some dates between now and the 25th that I'll let you kind of speak through, because I'm sure that's for consideration for this board to consider. The county, I have to assume, is considering this same consideration, and potentially the entity that is also acting as MDX and any other individual. So I'll let your council share on that. I think I hit all the points, but I think I am seeking direction. It may or may not be legal to legal. I think we're waiting to see, kind of what the intent is, or if it's just, I'm going to call it commissioner to staff or commissioner to board member. I think we're waiting to hear who all the parties are, et cetera. But maybe if council can maybe opine on the dates, give the board some framework there. And then I would ask Madam Chair, members of the board, for your thoughts around, and I do have some perspective on what an agreement could look like. So I'll pause there, council.
Right, and I would advise that we be in executive session in a shade meeting before we talk through any particulars about settlement. And we don't have a proposal coming from these parties. We received the ruling from Judge Walsh in our favor on every point in the case on September 25th. That means that there's 30 days to file a notice of appeal if they were thinking of filing a notice of appeal. So October 25th, that's a Friday, is their deadline to file a notice of appeal. As far as having a shade meeting, if we receive some kind of proposal to consider for settlement, having a shade meeting, the legislature has provided for the ability to do that under the Sunshine Law. But it has to be requested by the general counsel of the governmental entity in a public meeting, like right now, and I could request that. And then we have to notice it with reasonable notice, which under the precedent, it's usually at least a week unless there's an emergency situation. And I'm prepared to request that we do that. I don't know precisely when we need to have that meeting, because again, we don't have a proposal yet. And the only thing I would say to put things in the right perspective as we consider anything brought to us, to have a global resolution, and if any of the parties that are interested in talking about settling, now that they received that adverse ruling from Judge Walsh, we would not, I cannot imagine that I would ever advise you to enter into a settlement agreement where Judge Walsh's order was vacated. And the reason for that is all of those issues that we are now in, this is really kind of the GMX MDX4 lawsuit, 5 years of litigation and all this expense. If her order was vacated as part of a settlement agreement, even if the non-existent MDX entity says they're releasing us and won't sue again, or the county, the problem, you can't really have a global resolution, because when we won the first MDX1 lawsuit based on the public official standing doctrine, that says that only a private entity, not a governmental entity, can challenge constitutionality of this statute. So there would be nothing preventing some attorney from going and getting some private party that says they've been injured by an allegedly unconstitutional statute from then starting this over with another lawsuit. And we could be sitting here 5 years from now. Right now, we have this ruling from Judge Walsh, and a third district court of appeal, if an appeal is brought, I feel very good about how sound her ruling was. So I would just say that that's a framework for whatever they are to try to bring back to us. We need to think about.
I know, and we'll take your opinion in consideration, but I really just want to get this litigation over with.
Yes.
I don't want to spend any more money in litigation. I think the taxpayers of Miami-Dade County are tired. We're going to benefit as soon as we can settle this. So I understand what you're saying completely, but at the same time, the sooner we can move on, the better for everybody. So I look forward to see what their proposal is. Are there any points on that order by Judge Walsh that we would appeal? I mean, it was all in our favor, right? So
100% in our favor.
Okay.
And I am 100% desiring a victory through a settlement, if possible, to end this, because it does need to come to an end.
because at the end of the day, it's not about us winning or Miami-Dade County winning. We just want to make peace and move forward. So if they're listening, like we really just want to move forward and put this behind us. I think the most important part of her order is talking about their biggest concern, or supposedly their biggest concern, the reason that Miami-Dade County was part of the lawsuit, which was about their home rule powers. So we agree with them. We say, we don't think that this applies in this case, but we agree that you remain having those powers.
If I could, Madam Chair, maybe based on council's recommendation, if the board agrees that you make a motion and we can quickly poll you, let's just call it within the next 10 days, we can have a shade meeting that is scheduled. We'll poll all members of the board. And from that period, because I think the commission doesn't meet, I'm looking at my days, is it the 16th? Mayor, is it the 16th, Mayor? That's their next meeting? So we'll try to schedule it prior to that meeting, so that gives some time frame for
So
discussion.
to meet the requirement under the bylaws and under the statute, as the general counsel organization, I'm requesting that a shade meeting be publicly noticed. And
Do I need to make a motion to approve that request?
I think a motion then, based on my request, for staff to be directed to publicly notice a shade meeting.
So,
I'll make the motion.
is there a second?
Second.
So there was a motion made to approve the request by council for the shade meeting.
Yes.
And all those in favor say aye.
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 And then, Madam Chair, and then we'll follow up immediately after this meeting with each of you to try to get with your calendars to set something up as quickly as possible.
I would still like to make comments on the original issue. I also want this to end. The residents of Miami-Dade County have needlessly paid millions of dollars in endless lawsuits, and some because of ego, some because of whatever it might be. These gray hairs are not here by accident. When we first talked about it, I had my concerns. My concerns have come into fruition to a certain extent. While I absolutely want to settle, and I want to see what the settlement agreement is and what it is, I can tell you right now, and I'll publicly so it's clear, my appetite for anything beyond what we already approved is not very big. There's no reason why we, who you've clearly, and that was one of the questions I had, have won on every point, 5 different lawsuits over 5 years, we would enter into a settlement agreement that goes much beyond where we are at the current time. So that's just my position. And I say it publicly so they hear it from a board member of the appetite for anything further. So hopefully they won't get too cute and they won't get too greedy or too aggressive. But I personally, I can only speak for myself, don't have that appetite.
And I shared that one point, not to discourage settlement, but for them to hear that they ought to be thinking about a settlement proposal that preserves Judge Walsh's ruling, keeps it in place. Then there's something to talk about.
I think that the message is loud and clear. So, moving on.
Yes.
Was
Announcements.
there a vote on to schedule the public meeting?
Yes, there was a vote.
Yeah, there was, okay.
Unanimous vote, yes. So, on announcements, ribbon cutting ceremony, GMX project A3634. It's being planned for October 16th at 10 a.m. I hope everybody can attend. This would be for the Dolphin Park and Ride located at 12065 Northwest 12th Street. And I hope that our friends from the county and the TPO and everybody can get together. Is that the day of their meeting, the 16th? So maybe we should.
It is. Oh, my goodness. And this was a tentative date. So we now may have to, and I know our other partners are here as well. So we may have to look at a different date. Yes.
So, yeah, so let's put that on hold then until we can confirm a date for everybody. And then the next governing board meeting will be December 11th at 9 a.m. It's 2024. But before that, we'll have probably our shade meeting. Okay, so thank you, everybody, for a great meeting. We're adjourned. Adjourned at 10:59.